give as many opportunities and to get some issues that we've never had discussed. We wanted to have it brought to the table and so on. Right, so the panel will be moderated by myself and Ms. Tanzila Naim, who is the co-founder of Save the Beach. Tanzi will take the lead on this, and I will brief you a little bit, and she will also brief you a little bit on the format of the panel. Um, Please note that myself and Shahnaz will be available throughout the discussion to clarify any concerns that you may have at this time. If necessary, you can also send requests for translations directly to us, and we will do our best to provide the answers. There are two questions that we already know will be posed in Vivehi, and we will provide you with a English translation shortly. During the answer, we will try to provide at least point form translations for those two questions, and any other discussions that may take place. All right, over to Tanzi.
Thank you, Rai. I hope everybody can hear me fine. Yeah, I'll continue. Welcome to the panel discussion of covering environment. We all have been looking forward to this last activity of this two-day workshop. And we hope the discussion here tonight will be just as informative and useful to our participants.
Tanzi, your mic is very, we can't hear you very well. I think might be interference with the hair. Yeah. Try.
Yeah. So I hope the discussion here tonight will be just as informative and useful to our participants and observers as the lectures have been earlier from today and yesterday. I'm Tanzi, and I'm very happy to be here moderating today's panel discussion. We have a very great lineup of panelists here tonight. We will first be going through the introductions, and before we get to the questions from the participants, we will be first asking one question from covering environment, and then we will go on to the questions from the participants from the workshop. So joining here tonight is from the government of Maldives, Honorable Minister Ms. Mariam Shauna, Minister for Environment, Climate Change and Technology. From the international arena, Mr. Ken O'Flaherty, COP26 Senior Delegate. Representing the diving community, Mr. Hussein Rashid Sendi, founder of Marine Faculty of Marine Studies at Villa College and former PADI Regional Director. From the government regulatory body, Environment Protection Agency, Dr. Ibrahim Muhammad. From the business sector, we have Ms. Huda Ahmed, who is a director at Renewable Energy Maldives. From the legislative body, Vice Chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Environment and Climate Change, MP Ahmed Faisal. Representing civil society, Ms. Shazia Ali, who is the Grants and Outreach Manager at Transparency Maldives. Mr. Maid Zahir, Advocacy Director at EcoCare, representing academia and civil society. Also representing academia tonight is Dr. Mizna Muhammad, who is an environmental consultant. And last but not least, representing civil society and very importantly, activists, Ms. Hume Abdul Ghafoor from Save Maldives. Welcome everybody. Before going on to the questions, I will first like to give a minute to each of the panelists.
Before we get to the introductions, we're still getting a little bit of muffling sounds with your mic. And just give us 1 second because we're having a little bit of a problem with the live stream. Just 1 second, just 1 minute, please.
I also turned my fan off in case it might be fan.
I think it is very easy to give the advice, but very difficult to take it. But I think I noticed if you are moving, either yourself or your computer, then there was a lot more background noise. So I guess staying as still as possible, which is difficult, I know.
Okay, sorry, since we're short on time anyway, we're going to proceed without the live stream. We'll have a recording anyway, so what we'll do is we'll try and publish that afterwards, if that's all right with everyone. Shall we proceed as such?
All right. So I will start with giving each panelist a minute to introduce themselves. Let's start with the Honorable Minister, Ms. Shauna, who will please say a few words to the participants of this event.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Tanzi, and thank you, Rai, for giving me the opportunity to be here today. It's an honor to be here, and it is one of my first events as the Minister of Environment, Climate Change, and Technology. It's a mouthful, but it's all very interconnected and related as well. As I said in my briefing with Rai, one of the reasons why I did decide to be here is to connect with journalists and to connect with civil society members, because I do believe that it is an important part of me being in the cabinet to be able to connect with people who are doing a very important work in terms of protecting the environment, as well as being part of a group who can always speak the truth. And covering environment is a topic that is very close to my heart. I did start my career as a journalist in 2008, and I do realize how important it is for journalists to cover issues that concern the environment, climate change, and other related issues. This is, and I hope to listen to other panel members as well. And as I said earlier, this is a great opportunity to connect and hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Oflaherty.
Hello, welcome everyone. As you've heard, my name is Ken O'Flaherty. I am the COP26 Regional Ambassador for the Asia Pacific region. My job is to be engaging with governments, but also with businesses, civil society, media, and other stakeholders on climate and environment issues ahead of COP26. As you may know, COP26 will be the meeting of leaders in Glasgow in November, which we hope very much will mark a major step forward in global efforts to tackle climate change. It is a top priority for our government. We are very clear that the world is not on track at the moment for 1.5 degrees warming, and we are determined to do all we can to raise global ambition to reach that target set in Paris 5 years ago. I'm really pleased to be working with the Maldives, given that the Maldives is, of course, one of the countries most affected by climate change, notably given rising sea levels and the extreme weather events, but it's also a country which is showing great leadership. And your target of reaching net zero by 2030 is an inspiration to countries worldwide. I'd like to take the opportunity to wish the Minister Shauna welcome. I hope very much we can have a bilateral talk at some point in the future, and I'm looking forward to hearing your questions. I think from our perspective, we need an all of society approach to tackle climate change, and I think the role of the media is crucial in ensuring that we reach all the different sectors of society who need to make that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Flaherty. Sandy?
Thank you for the team covering environment for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And yeah, I've been diving for a very long time, about 40 years, scuba diver. And I have seen a lot of positive and negative changes. And it is something very special that you are trying to get the environmental journalist, which can translate the information which we actually can give, because as diver, we can explain the underwater world, and that if it is shared in a nicely way, that could help change the world. Yes, it's an honor to have the Minister Shauna here and the Parliament member, and we will have a very successful event. I'm looking really forward for the questions. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you, Cindy. Dr. Ibrahim Ali.
Good evening. Thank you all. So I represent the Environmental Protection Agency, which is actually very young institution formed in 2008, soon after President Nasheed took office. So the agency was formed by integrating Environmental Research Center, which was functioning at the time, and Maldives Water and Sanitation Authority. So these were two of the, one was mostly purely research-based institution. The other one was a regulatory and enforcement institution. So I joined EPA soon after it was formed. I moved from the Environment Ministry, and I have been working at different levels in EPA, and currently I'm the Deputy Director General. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. Huda?
Hi, my name is Sudha. I am a director of Renewable Energy Maldives, and we have been, Renewable Energy Maldives has been in operation since 2007, and we've come a long way in introducing renewable energy to this country. As a country, even when we started, there was hardly anything on solar going on in the Maldives, and right now it's considered something that is viable and people can do. And as you have given me the representation on the business side, and I think it is very important for each business to be very, very careful and in their planning and in their work to ensure environmental and climate change interests are addressed within their business plans as well. That's one side of the story. I close to my heart are problems like plastic pollution, conservation, and climate change adaptation. I'm looking forward to this discussion, and thank you very much for inviting me to this panel.
Thank you, Huda. MP Hyton?
Hello. Thank you, Rai, and thank you, Tanzi, for having me here in this. Actually, I'm from Environment and Climate Change Committee in the Parliament. I'm the Deputy Chair. And I think, as you may know, this is the first time in the Parliament, in the 19th Parliament. We are in the 19th Parliament. In the 19th Parliament, it's the first time that there's a committee for environment and climate change issues or so on. So we find it that this Parliament, the 19th Parliament, we are much more concerned about the environment aspect and the climate change aspect. And recently we passed the climate emergency bill, and still there are more on the pipeline, and we are working on the energy bill right now. And I think we could do a lot with the committee, and I'm expecting so much from covering environment, because as you may know, there are so many issues where the journalists and the professionals, they are not aligned most of the times. So when the journalists are reporting things, they don't have much facts. They're just based some kind of sometimes bias on some ends. So what Rai and Tanzi is doing here, I really support it, and I'm looking forward for a positive outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Hyton. Shazia, could say a few words.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tanzi and Covering Environment team, for having me. First of all, let me congratulate on having such a great panel. I am really happy to see panelists from all the sectors which is relevant. So very excited to be here. I have been leading climate governance project of Transparency Maldives. Is a NGO which talks about anti-corruption and good governance. We also look into the climate governance aspect more on a systematic level and try to address the systematic issues by working with the government at times, sometimes pressuring, trying to voice out the beneficiaries or the vulnerable population. So in this process, Transparency Maldives work, we have found that journalists has helped a lot, and I believe that having journalists on board and bringing them together for this sort of forum will help in voicing and increasing the work that civil societies are doing in this area. So looking forward to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Shazia. Mike.
Hi, I hope you can hear me well. So I am Maid. I work for an organization called EcoCare Maldives. EcoCare Maldives has been around since 1994. We work on environmental issues, conservation issues, policy advocacy, and also we work with local communities as well as the education sector, promoting and raising awareness on environmental issues. When EcoCare started as an organization that was founded by two writers, two journalists, and they wrote about environmental issues. And that's where we started our work. And I think it's very important for EcoCare Maldives to engage with the media, talk with journalists and writers, and to see how we can get the message across. Personally, I have a background in environment and earth sciences. I'm interested in areas on climate change, resilience, disaster risk reduction, and environmental governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Ume, you could please say a few words.
Hi. Thank you so much to Rai and the team covering environment. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Hume and I represent a citizen-led campaign to protect our ecosystems. Basically, the Save Maldives campaign came into being as people came together to protest the destruction of one of the largest wetlands and mangrove ecosystems in the country, Kurudufushi. And since then, that was in 2017. Since then, we have seen so much destruction. Actually, up until then, there has been a lot of destruction of ecosystems. This is irreversible, and we were not able to just sit back and watch the damage that was being done in the name of development. The Maldives has a reputation for being pristine, beautiful, environmentally outstanding, but this reputation is no longer reputable. And I think we have we have a responsibility to look after our ecosystems. They are finite. They are not, they cannot be got back once destroyed. And the extent of unsustainable practices in development has caused the loss of so much damage and destruction to our ecosystems. And Save Maldives, although we are very close to mangrove ecosystems are very close to our hearts, all ecosystems have become extremely important for us regardless. So we protest and we raise concerns about all kinds of ecosystem destruction in the Maldives regardless. And our position is that we must protect and act on climate to protect nature in the Maldives. So that is where we are coming from, and we are very much interested in telling the truth. And to the journalists here, I would like to say we have an obligation to the people who are losing their livelihood resources as a result of business as usual practices happening with impunity in this country. And the buffer we need to protect the environment is the journalists to inform the public, and the truth is what matters on this. It is for the sake of everyone, for both present and future generations. So I wish you all the best in your efforts in this initiative. Thank you so much. And I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Hume. Dr. Misna, if you would say a few words.
Hi, I'm Misna, and I'm here probably representing the academia. My passion is researching about the environment, but I have worked across the span of environmental areas from the government to the academic sector, as well as currently being more engaged in civil society. I'm working in an NGO called Endeavour, where we are working on development and environmental issues. And as an academia, I have started from very physical geography, looking at mainly sciences, but in my engagement with research about the environment, I've come to learn that we humans are very much integrated, part of the problem, and very appropriately today we should be part of the solution. So my work is more now focused on working with communities in environmental conservation. And I think from starting from my school days, I've worked almost 30 years in the sector. And honestly, this is the first time I'm engaging with journalists in such a platform. So thank you, Rai, and the organizers. I think this is a very needed initiative, and hope to continue this engagement with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Misna. Thank you all for the introduction and the words that you've said here today. First of all, I'd like to say that just before we started this session, I was observing Rai, Bebe, and Avi go over the questions, and the questions that all the journalists have sent forth were really, really good. They had a really, really tough time picking out just 10 questions from among a lot of questions. And we also feel bad that we cannot give time to all these questions because they are in fact all very important questions that need answering. And so we hope that going forward that the journalists will put forward these questions to these panelists or even other people and continue carrying on with their inquiry. But before we get to the questions, the first question will be posed to the panel from Covering Environment. So I will let Rai ask the question.
Well, it's a very simple question. Actually, compared to the other questions, it's probably your easiest question. So with that in mind, just to kickstart the conversation, I would like to ask to each panelist, what, in their opinion, is the single most pressing issue in environment with regards to Maldives currently right now? Yeah.
Thank you, Rai. Just before we get to answering, I just want to say that because we are working with a very limited amount of time, we've been given 5 minutes per question. So I will try to keep the answers as short as possible. And for this answer, if we could just go around and quickly, just perhaps it's maybe not fair for me to ask, but a really short answer. For some of you, I'm sure it's not a fair question just to give it in one sentence. What is the most pressing issue? Let's start with the minister.
Thank you. I think it's very unfair to say there is one single issue that is most pressing, because every single issue in what we face in terms of environment and climate change is the most pressing issue. If I may go, if I may look into issues separately, I think particularly issues that are a result of our actions within the country, I think waste is one of the biggest problems we face. And how we manage waste and the issues that are surrounded because of how we mismanage waste actually is one of the most pressing issues. And in terms of the impact of climate change in the Maldives, I think the impact on coral reefs and the impact on our water resources and our food. These are all because of global climate change. So these can be, if we can separate into domestic and impact of global climate change issues, I would say they would be the biggest issues. It's very difficult to answer this question in such a short time as well.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. Sandy?
Thank you. The last 5 years has been, we all have observed high temperatures and El Niños. So since 2016 until this year is very positive, I would say, but until 2020, we had large scale coral bleaching in the Maldives. At the same time, since 2015, we have done too much reclamation. But to make it very simple, I would say the problem is the EIA is done too quickly. For example, just example, like this Ella King license dino. I see something like that. And also the problem is also people, there is nobody auditing what is happening after that reclamation is done, compare that to the audit. I think if we can do both simultaneously, then I think we will save the corals. That means we will also reduce the temperature would go down. Also, one thing which is ongoing right now is the removal of trees from building guest houses. Or, for example, in one island, there is 40 houses, new land given to couples. And that, they're removing all the trees before they can even enter their house.
I think we've got a couple of pressing issues in there.
Yeah.
Huda?
Hi, I will be very short. I think climate change is the biggest issue in the that we are facing now and we will face in the coming future.
Thank you. Maid, what is the most pressing issue for you?
So on election day, if we have the fish, the birds, the sand, and the trees vote, then a lot of our issues can be solved. I think the biggest issue that I would say is a lack of evidence-based resilience planning. And this is overall all major issues that we're facing, be it climate change, be it waste management, be it any other environmental concerns that we face. I think it's important to go and look at the real scenario at hand. Evidence-based decision-making in our planning processes can actually help us a lot. Mahajarawa, for example, need to be grounded immediately. And these are things that are serious things that we should consider. And again, go back to research, go back to evidence-based solutions, how our islands can be protected and deal with these issues. And then, get the trees and the fish to vote. Could help.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. O'Flaherty, what is the most pressing issue?
I would say at the global level, the most important thing is to reduce emissions so that we do not hit higher than 1.5 degrees warming. Of course, the Maldives can help show leadership there by deploying renewables and reducing emissions yourselves. But we are also clear there's pressing demands for help from the global community and from business on adaptation, on the resilience that Maid was just talking about, and also ensuring that there is greater climate finance, both private and international, to support the Maldives in their journey towards a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fadi. Shazia.
It's very difficult to say one issue, but I agree with everybody here. Climate change is the most pressing issue, while if we look at locally, it's not being able to balance the protecting our environment and development. So unplanned development is causing us not being able to protect our carbon sinks and other places where we can offset the carbon that is being emitted within the country or globally. So thank you.
Thank you, Shazin. Dr. Ibrahim?
Like many of you said, it is diffuse, diverse, and issues erupt, and everything is connected to environment. But for me, it's climate change. Thank
you. Yeah, Dr. Misna.
I think it's difficult, like for everyone, as everyone has said, difficult to point out one thing. But there are so many issues, but I think most of the for Maldives, it's more issues of our own making. And I have, in my lectures with my students, talked about the poverty environment nexus, and talked about who are the bigger, who causing destruction to the environment, the poor or to the rich. But seeing the so many things we see in Maldives, I would definitely point towards capitalism as one of the really main reasons for the destruction in our environment. And having said that, I think this comes from how we value our environment. It's not just the profits, the economic benefits. We need to consider ecosystem value. And I think we so far, even in the research, I've done most of my research has been in environmental valuation, but so far I haven't seen so much work in that area. And I think that's an area that needs to really be researched on, because we need to value the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Misna. Hume, what is the most pressing issue?
Well, I think it's a difficult question, and I'm sure climate change is on everyone's mind. But I would like to highlight the issue a little bit differently to Dr. Misna, although I agree exactly with what she's saying. But the way I would phrase it is self-harm. The Maldives is self-harming, and it is not in our interest to inflict so much self-harm in the way the country is destroying entire ecosystems irreversibly without regard for either today or tomorrow. So our own self-inflicted wounds are one of the biggest issues we have today. And climate change will only make it worse. So in that regard, bottom line is still self-harm, unsustainable development, destruction.
Thank you. MP Haitham, where do you stand?
I think as most of us said, there's no single issue. But for me as lawmakers, we have a single issue. That is no proper information, no data is there. Usually when we are passing the bills or when we are working on the bills, we rely on data a lot. But I'm afraid that there's not enough data in the Maldives where we can address or analyze things. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Haitham. Now we can move on to the questions from the participants of the workshop. Just before we start, once again, I'll just remind everyone that we have a 5-minute time slot for each question. If any of the panelists have something to contribute to a particular question or answer, they can raise their hand, and I will allow as much discussion as possible within that 5-minute time for each of the questions. The first question is coming from Aishat Hanan, Raj MV. Is Aishat Hanan? Shahnaz?
Hanan, you've been allowed to speak. I think you have your mute on. but you've been given access, so you can enable the mute. I mean, voice and the camera as well if you want. Yeah.
Thank you. Hanan?
Hear me?
It was not clear at all.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. First of all, very, very happy to be here. The last 2 days were amazing, for sure. Some of my personal heroes, people I looked up to on the panel growing up. So this is going to be super exciting. My first question for the panelists on behalf of everybody who took part on covering environment is based on the imminent ban on single-use plastics that we have coming up in the Maldives. And the question that I would like to pose is, do civil society actors feel that the state has been able to facilitate the required legislation and provide an adequate supply of alternatives that will reasonably cater to the public demand? Now, when we're banning plastics, we're also telling people that you can't use certain products. So what are the alternatives? Do we have that in stores? Is there going to be a shortage? Sort of the things that I would like to touch down on with the answers. And also the point on legislation. It really needs to be implemented. So I wanted to ask what the progress was on that.
Thank you, Hanan. I think there was in two parts. One was asked towards the civil society. Maybe Hume could say something, or Maid. Hume, please.
Well, I must admit, I'm not entirely clear about the legislation and the phase-out plan. I always look to zero waste for my information on this one, but what I can say is that there is nothing, there is not enough done on alternatives. On your, your question is, are we prepared for the phase-out? I don't believe so. I don't believe so because my understanding is that even food packaging, simple, the issue of single-use food packaging, there are no alternatives, and there will be problems for the small businesses especially. So I am not sure if we are prepared. That is all I can say, and I would refer you to Zero Waste for much more detailed information on this. Thank you.
The minister has raised her hand.
I just wanted to inform that there were 12 items that were that has been planned for phase out in this, and then we have not received much complaints from importers and businesses in terms of, which I think is a very good sign. We have received a request for only 2 items, and this has been discussed with the Ministry of Economic Development and also with the Plastic Phase Out Committee. I must say that one of the more promising and encouraging things for me as minister, as well as for the government, is that businesses are ready to do this. And what I have seen is that they have found alternative products, and it is for market to find these alternative products as well. To be honest, that I had suspected that or thought that there would be more pushback from businesses on these things. So it is encouraging to see that out of the 12 items that have been planned for phase out, we have received request for changes from only 2 items.
Thank you for the input. Mike.
Yeah, generally, I think, again, as Hume mentioned, I think the best people to answer the question is Zero Motives, Zero, the Afra and team. And also, I think, yeah, I think the six policy areas that has been identified is well and good. But I also note that there are two short-term and long-term targets that are mentioned on the phase-out plan. I feel that there's a lot of communication gap with the communities, especially the island communities, on what's really going to happen on 1st June. I think there is a broader need for people to really understand and for us to educate. And I think this is a responsibility not only to the Environment Ministry, but also for all of us, especially those of us who keep on engaging with the communities. But I also feel at the same time that given that a lot of local councils are have come on board now, and this is the right time for us to actually engage with the new leaderships to actually talk about these serious challenges that we face. I don't feel we have done enough. Really, we've not done enough for the first June ban. And I think people, at least the people that have been reaching out to us, have a very confused information around what is really happening. So, and I understand the challenge is because of the situation currently we are all in. Given that the pandemic, some of the communities find this as the least of their concerns. And also, if you talk about that we would not be allowing food parcel packaging and all these kind of things now, you would have communities who are in lockdown situations are also reacting to it in a very different way. I understand there is that challenge as well, but I think communication is key. I think we need to do more to get our communities more educated and more aware on this issue.
Thank you, Mike. Shazia, I'll let Huda say something first, but we are running out of time for this question.
Yeah, just very quickly, as somebody who worked in the plastic phase-out committee, drafting helping with the plan, I just want to say that one of the things that we need to think about is not one replacing the other in terms of alternatives. What we have to remember is that we need to change the way we work, the way we live. We need, it's not replacing one with the other. It's about changing how we do things. And I completely agree with Maid on more communication and more awareness raising on what the options are, what the alternatives, what kind of lifestyles we can actually practice to come to terms with these bans. And the June 1st ban is just the import ban, starting with an import ban and with very sort of items we thought would be easy for people to give up, and there would be alternatives that they can use. But there are more to come. So communication on the plan, absolutely, yes, Nai.
Thank you. I think we have to go to the next question. Shazia, if you can keep it very short.
Yeah, while I agree with all the panelists, I think the bill also doesn't talk about the production in the country. So there are government-owned companies producing plastic bottled water, and we don't know what's going to happen. So that is something we have to consider. And I think the pushback might come once we start like that import ban and custom starts to making action. So.
I will just quickly give a few seconds to the minister to say something. It's on mute.
Maybe most people are not aware that there has been an amendment to the Environment Act that was sent just when the Majlis was closing for last session to ban production as well within the country. So, and they've had first reading of the bill, and I think it would be good for civil society and even journalists to be more vigilant on what's been discussed in Majlis.
Thank you, Minister. Second question is from Asiyat Mohammed Said, former editor at Mihar.
Former journalist.
Former journalist at Mihar. Asiyat? Is Asif there?
Asi is there, but Rai, you still have the host access, so you need to give her permission to speak.
Yes, got it. I wasn't able to unmute myself for a while there. Di ba yung suwal ko lang ng Minister Shauna mi EPA miniwan ko lumabehe goto. EPA miniwan kanege goto ga mi dia December ga nila hamadasang sarkaro ge strategic action plan ga eba ove. Then ekama gule gotong think kame ekama ki mihatane kan nukurevi o sababu orang filal de fananto then EPA minimantane gotu hamachege dani kon tari hegato then paukamaka EPA minimum kurang sarkarong gasto kurabani kongotakato adi minimum kan libeni kongkong kantattake gato. Shukriya.
Thank you, Asif. Minister, if you could answer, and then I think also Dr. Ibrahim was talking about this a little bit during his lecture as well. So after the minister responds to Asif, maybe you could also say something. Thank you, Minister.
Do I speak in Dive or English?
Any language you prefer. Dive is well.
Thank you, Asif. Alondos me. Alon furat me dandawalam beno me swala jawab din me kuring me ki vegen a kametto. Media sarukaruga invadandawane me tourism actor war alon men nede badale genevunu hasako faturwarikan tarage koruma EIA hadani ministry ge faraturne then edos koluga ufedigen a wahake mi wahake ki then beenumakavi emme bodu kamaki e war bodu oversight function ke gelligendani checks and balances war boda eba gelligende hasako faturwarikan tarage koruma mi unna project taguga EIA tourism ministry ne hadane. So that is the background of where this discussion originated from. Then alunmen sarukarang as emme furatama ministry kiga alonero policy of yoga rice of yoga dakkamunga wahakeki kong model leto alunmen beenu kurani. Then a discussion terega me alunmen discuss kurevunu me ganona badal genevigen miharing environment acted badal genevigen EPA ge daur fula kurevita kurevani gottaka gole goto adi EPA kiga almen discussions the gendevunu miharus discussions the mihal alon mihiri minister ge haisiyate hema miharu alon EPA kiga badal koffa emme boda faha kurevun ekkamaki operational independence abehe goto me EPA ki warang underfunded wara under resourced wara understaffed organization and institution oinniruga EPA ge nimmunta nimmumang EPA wara boda parosa wange bajehe ministry ga honna waki departments daka ema alonge visnumuga miharu adi EPA ge staffung ge visnumuge emme bodu ekkamaki e operational independence e padiben jehe evidence based decision making na EIA ge decisions tabves nimmumuga EPA konne barosa waka nuje ministry ge staff non ministry ge waki departments so that is something that I will be looking into anekkamake EPA ge nimmunta appeal process hardana koro appeal process hardana kore bunabhoge maneki EPA ge emme EPA report kuram ves me innani minister adkam minister me innani EPA ge nimmuntan appeal process so hema me regulatory function ge tereng as in hagigatuga checks and balances ega emme rangalugatuga no eti innani kiyen hema this is something that I will be looking into then kontari heggato alon ummid korani alganuge leadership ke dashuga irat koreviya EPA will have operational independence adi mi dennevi appeal process ka mi anna kankama gule gotum insaf verikon adi transparent kon ekankan haldu koreveni ko ettake kandayolo and then consuelo එම අලුගණ්ඩ මානකුරවැනි මිනිව මොස්සසාය වකින් අනෙක්ක උෆෙද්දුමවර ගොඩ මිදෙන්න විකංකං හල්ලු කරුන් දැන් ඒක ඉතුර සර්කාරු මිහාරු වනි EPA ಗೆ ಗವರ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಗೆ ಕುಲವಾಲ ಅದಿ ಗವರ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಗೆ ಜಿಮ್ಮತವಗೆ ತೆರೆಗ EPA ಇತುರ ಗವರ್ನ್ ಕುರುಮುಗ ಮಿ ಹಮ ಮಿ ಹರ್ದಣ ಕುರೆವೆನ ಗೊತ್ತಕ್ಕೆ ವೆಸ್ ಕಂಡೆ ಎಳಿಫವನಿ ಸೊ ultimately governing board akon govern kuraifa adi appeal process transparent kurevene gote otumaki arun deke gotuga operational independence service adi overall governance service divigendana hardanaka
I will just thank you, Minister. I'll just let Dr. Ibrahim say something before I give you a chance. Dr. Ibrahim,
thank you. Me minister විදාළු hen me hama government emme furtama sama me hawal viduwa ho on feshige maseke kogge me environment act tourism act ge amendment genessa me tourism related EIA ge hoya process EPA ගෙන්දා ගොතවනි නිම්මිෆා then me emme bodu as aruna pha kore kamki me government itself dawlat ki me hama war baver environment cross cutting masaketa involve tanevima dawlat ge muassasa tawwe seba environment protection agency fine kure enwata piyawala wala den e gota me piyawala wala arwagot ki etani general gas vidawle seba dawlat ge muassasa ko ane muassasa fine kuggen me pasa hodan uluni mawar bodu me datitaka kurimative agigatuga because the attorney general has to represent EPA wes hama egota attorney general has to represent dawlatuge muassasa wes misala kammi vetuvedia tage bore housing ministry fine kureifa noniyamu local by council ta fine kureifa then ehme wagati anika mihuri hatanaka budget mideni finance ministry deruge budget anika mi ane mi budget on we fine pay kurani yesen wima in that way also comments kahala mi minimum kana olla ebaje independent ko mi government authorities taka deal kurumuga power exercise kurani
thank you Dr. Mike our short ko
මම මසේ කරන්නේ තවර ෂෝට් කුමේ වාගේ දෙකේ මේ අනේ මියදකි දිරේතක තිගේ නස්ලුගේ දොස් මියදු අරුන් මේ ෆාහකුරනේ දිවිහි රාජ්‍යයේ ආබාදී ආම්දනීගේ එම්මෙ ආම්දනි හෝදා දිවිහි රාජ්‍යයේ එම්මෙහා කංකං හයගතු අරුන් මේ කුරා වසීලතුගේ දොස් මියදු අරුන් මේ ෆාහකුරනේ බයෝඩයිවර්සිටි වික්කයාගෙන් අරුන් මේ මාදම අන්න සරකාරකම් ඒ ගුදුරති වසීලේ ನತ್ತಾದ ಕುರಾ ಮಸೇಕೆ ಅಳುಮೆನ್ನ ಹುಟ್ಟುವ ಮಸೇಕ್ ಕುರವೆನೆ ಮಿಯದು ಮಿದಿಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರುಗ ಮಸೇಕೆ ಹುಟ್ಟುವ ಅಳುಮೆನ್ ಕುರಿ ಮಸೇಕತೊಂ ಕೋಟು ತಕ ಅಳುಮೆನ್ನ ದೆವಿಜ್ಜೆ ಅಳುಮೆನ್ನ ಮಿ ದಿವೆ ರಾಜ್ಯಗೆ ಏಕಿ ತಂತನೋಗ ಏಕಿ ಕೊಗ್ಗೊತ ಮಿವಾಹಕ ದೆಕ್ಕಿಜ್ಜೆ ಅಳುಮೆನ್ನ ಮಿ ಇಂತಿಹಾಬಿ ರೈಸಕ ರೈಸ್ ಸೋಲಿ ಓಣು ಇರು ಅಳುಮೆನ್ ಬದ್ದಲ್ ಕುನಿ ಸೆಪ್ಟೆಂಬರ್ ದಿವಸ ಶಾರ ಅಳುಮೆನ್ ಇವಾಹಕ ದೆಕ್ಕಿನ್ ಎದು ಅಳುಗನ್ಮೆನ್ ಮಾಣ ಕುರಿ ಮಿನಿಮಮ್ ಮೋಸಸಾಗ ಏರು ದೆಣ್ಣವಿ ಮಿನಿಮಮ್ ಮೋಸಸಾಯಂ ಉಣ್ಣಾನೆ ಅಳುನ್ ಮೆಂಗಾತು ದೆಣ್ಣವಿ ಮಿಯದು ಅಳುನ್ ಮೆನ್ನ ಹುಸೇನ್ ರಶೀದ್ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಕಮುಗ ಅಳುನ್ ಮೆ ಎಕಿ ಫಹರು ಮತಿ ಮಿವಾಹಕ ಎಕಿ ಗೊಗ್ಗೊತ ದಕ್ಕಂ ಅಳುನ್ ಮೆ ಮಸೆ ಕೊರೆ ಅಳುನ್ ಮೆನ್ನ ದಿನ್ನಿ ಎಕಿ ಕಹಲ ಜವಾಬು ಎಬ್ಬೆ ಸಾಲ್ತೆಗ್ಗ ಮಿನಿಮಮ್ ಪುರಾಣಿ ಗೊತಕಣ್ಣು ವಿಷ್ಣು ಹೊರೆ ಅದು ಮಿಯದು ಅಳುನ್ ಮೆನ್ನ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಗೆ ಫರಾತ ಆಪರೇಷನಲ್ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಗೆ ವಾಹಕ ದೆಕ್ಕೆ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಥಿಂಕ್ is required engel to madama anna sarukarakum koffane kamaka mi sarukarum algon menna ehiterikan for koddeshe almen beenum mani divehi dawdatuga divehi sarukara divehi rajyega huri mi vyafari taka jawabdari kurevene muassasayen onna minimum kam matiga divehi rajyege mibuna iktisod damahatta dene minimum baruga minimum kam matiga dawwa ko minimum kammatiga fiyawal wala evves faratege nufuz neti mirajyege iktisoda mirajyege timawish rakkateri kurane minimum EPA onna ei war tafat wahate alon midakkani ewaka miyenna sarukar alon gabul kora misarukar masekete kuraka alon personally misarukar ko fori gina kankama ama appreciate ko taidu kur alon midakkani miyenna sarukar gawa miyadu ala fiewala kunne algon menna miyenna sarukar ko alon mi beenova himaddi be.
Thank you, Mike. Hume miswala gadi usse fotima annaswal. I'm sure you agreed with what Mike was saying. I think there's also a role for the Majlis in there, in addition to the government.
Miss Wani, mara muhim suwal bhi mahamalu and commented them.
Yes, please.
So if I may respectfully barge in here.
Sure.
EPA minimum kurmaki algun men mai de den nevi heng algun men hama warak gina baya ku e kama request kuri kame mi Rais Ibrahim Muhammad Solih ge arihun befla adi mi nuhovenis ingeto then heavy margum menge warbodu expectation nego kamaki heavy EPA minimum kurmaki algun menge timaveshi himaye kurumuga oe emme furatama e kanta EPA hamekani operational kurma minimum kurma mi warbodu tapatu dekame එවෙම අස්ලු operationalizing EPA resource දෙන්නමා විකාල කන්තත්තක EPA minimum කමාය decision make කුරුමුගේ ෆුර්සතු EPA ලිබුමකි එමෙ මුහෙමුකන්ත සබබකි de point alon ෆාක්කොලාන අලොමෙන්ගේ de තිමාවේශීගේ වර බොඩු de ජරීමායෙන් හිංගෑෆි EPA minimum නූම්බි EPA ගේ decision override කොප්ප කුළුදු ෆුෂි කුලි හලාකු කුරි EPA ගේ decision override කොප්ප නූනු මාෆරු airport halak hadafa etang era halaku puri nunu maafaraki algomennan iyada den nupurevene gudrati musandikame gerligen gosse oy rashe mikahala kita hadisa to algon menna mi kurmatlan jeheni minivan EPA neti menge to mi amilla mige science abbala evidence abbala e bala argument miharuge jiltakasha annango jiltaka libene gelluman nubala migota decision negima override kurima political decisions negima gellun libeni rayitunna emvema e point alganda hama dunu kollewune shukriya.
Thank you, Hume. Next question is from Ahmed Nasu. Adu Live Times of Adu. Nasu?
Yeah, Nasa, you can speak now. Ahmed Nasa, are you there?
I'm not seeing Nasa.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, speak a little louder, please.
Okay. Thank you. My question is directed towards Ms. Shadi Ali. I have several questions from Mr. Shauna. I hope that I'm given the chance to address them.
We're really running out of time, so if you could repeat the first question. If there's time at the end, we'll come back to it.
Yeah, to Shah, my question is on the topic of climate governance. What would you say is the most important change that transparency models recommends that the country make in order to ensure environmental protection and justice?
Okay, thank you for the question, Nasu. And I think it's not an easy task to just point out one and not talk about the rest. But to begin, I think I would like to highlight some of the overall governance issues that is not just related to environment sector, which needs to be improved, which is the culture of secrecy needs to end and transparency needs to be increased. Increase public participation, that too in a meaningful way, where proper information is given beforehand in a way that is easily reachable to the in a language which is understandable to everybody, which then only we'll be able to have a proper meaningful participation of everyone, men, women, and all the marginalized group. The next one I would say is we need to take action against the people who are committing environmental crimes. Recently, we have seen a lot of cases related to shark fisheries and investigation going on, and we don't know what's happening there. So we need to see, like Mike mentioned, we have seen our environment getting destroyed and civil society organizations go in court, but then there is no proper mechanisms to address those through the legal system. And we also need to recognize loss and damage. Maldives was at the forefront in advocating to put that on international instruments such as Paris Agreement, but locally I don't think our laws are reflecting them. So it's very, very, very important that we also reflect them in our local policies and make sure that the benefits that we are getting from other countries as a receiving country, that it is going towards the local people. But if I have to say the most important thing, governance thing that we need to address in terms of protecting the environment would be making EPA legally independent institution, meaning that it needs all the financial and decision making. I was very happy to hear Minister Shauna mentioning that it will be given decision making and financial independence, but like Mike mentioned, we can't afford to have again a different government coming and not giving that independence that this government would be providing or are providing right now. So I would like to see, or the transparency mode, like Maldives would recommend to have an independent EPA as an independent organization, which is in all means legally, financially, or decision-making wise independent. Thank you.
Thank you, Shazia. I'm not going to refer this question to anybody else since we've spent quite a bit of time on the first 3 questions now. The next one is from Mariam Malsa. She's a freelance journalist. Malsa? Talking is permitted.
Is my voice clear now?
Also, speak a little louder.
How about now?
Yeah, it's better.
All right. It's been highlighted in several lectures in this workshop that there's a pressing need to conduct more research into environmental issues in Maldives. My question concerns whether this is caused by a lack of prioritization given to researching local biodiversity and evidence-based policy options by the state institutions and the existing regulations, or whether this gap exists because of difficulties in implementing policies and legislation that already exists.
Was it directed to any particular person? Can I direct this question to Dr. Misna?
Sure, it's not directed to anyone in particular.
About the data and research in the environment sector, I think I've been working in the environment sector since 2000 in the Maldives, and I think to this day, what we see in reports is very much the same as when we started out, and I'm pretty sure it's the same as what those before us has written down in reports, documents about doing systematic research. For example, we're talking about climate change, and we still don't have a lot of systematic observation and setups or systems established. And I think that is an area we need to very much work on. And I have personally, the researching is my passion, and the very reason I went into studying environment is for that reason. And I've tried many different ways to do this, but we need a lot of support from the government actually to set up. For example, currently we, for example, academia as well. In many countries, it's not just the academia that is doing research, even private research institutes are there. For now, there isn't any opportunity for even privately to set up a research institute. I have tried, and so there are, and I think it's a lack of interest. Maybe we need to produce more people interested in research. For example, we have now a lot of less students who do sciences. Those who come out are mainly doing business stream. And I think somewhere down the line there, we have less people who are coming out into doing research. And at the maybe that's the reason for now those who go up to the top in the government decision making, again, that interest, maybe it's a sort of a maybe there's no time, or uh, I I think there's more sort of less interest or motivation. That's my personal feeling. And then on what the MP had said earlier on the lack of data, and it, I agree, it's a very pressing issue. There's lots of reasons we don't have local Maldivian data, but as a starting point, we can always look into case studies done elsewhere, apply those, adapt those, and we just need to have a starting point. And so that's my feel on it. It's, we have a long way to get into that level of evidence-based decision making. Maybe Ibrahim might want to add something.
MP Haitham had raised a hand.
Thank you. I just thought I should mention something because with the recent bills we are passing, there are a lot of laws which says that certain kind of reportings or certain kind of data should be provided within a certain period of time. So as I mentioned, it is a pressing issue that we don't have enough data or anything. So with the new bills we are passing, we're trying to make sure it is mandatory to submit data and everything to it. So.
Thank you, MP Haitham. Shazia, is it enough that the request for data is there, or should there be more prioritization?
I will just add the difficulty in getting data. The civil society organization or the researchers who are trying to get information is very difficult, especially a lot of work is actually done by mostly government institutions so far. So if those data is available, it will be really helpful for different organizations to like build on or to bring solutions which are evidence-based. So just to highlight that if there is a difficulty, and let's limit that difficulty and make it more accessible.
Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you, Dr. Mizna. We both underwent some research work, and there is a lot of difficulties even getting data which is in different institutions. I myself had a lot of difficulties getting some maps from Maldives Land and Survey Authority for my research. That is one thing. The other thing is, I think the most important thing is the university does not have very extensive, I mean, they started an environmental science degree program, but even this year they only managed to get 3 students. So they were unable to continue the program, the bachelor's program. And I don't know where the exact issue is. Is it because the students who are coming out from the A levels and higher education, are they keen on pursuing any other type of programs? And really in our environment sector, we have a lot of highly educated academics, but what I have noticed is it's a very narrow discipline. It is majority of our staff or our specialists are environmental science graduates. We don't have physical science graduates like geology, hydrology, pollution, atmospheric science, these kind of areas which are highly required for the research to make evidence-based research. Even climate science, emission scenarios, modeling the impact of reclamation and other impacts on the marine environment. We don't have specialists in this field, so it's very, very difficult, and often we have to rely on different environmental projects and bring specialists from abroad and do some work, and it's really hard. Yeah, we need to actually move forward like private research institutes, empowering the Maldives National University to bring more students to their science programs. They should have Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Environmental Science and various disciplines. I think we need, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. Minister, is it an issue of prioritization or implementation?
I just wanted to comment on data availability and how difficult it is to get data that is already with us as well. One of the priorities that I have discussed with, I have many departments under the ministry that are critical for the issues that you have particularly raised. And in my meetings with the Environment Department, with EPA, with the Department of Meteorology and climate change, there's an abundance of data that's available actually. But as you have rightly pointed out, these are not readily available. And one of the reasons they have said is also because they don't have the right tools to and resources to put these into websites and formats and all these things. And fortunately, this mandate has also come under the ministry in terms of technology as well. And this is something that we have already discussed with the National Center for Information Technology, NCIT, is to how can we be effectively present in data that's available within government to a format that is usable for journalists, for the public, for researchers as well. Because if we don't use it now, there's no way someone's, I mean, I understand how important it is for policy making, for research, as well as for finding solutions to the issues that we face, both from all public policy point of view. So data integration is something that does fall under my mandate at the moment. And this is something that I have already discussed with in our department meetings.
I would just also like to ask Mr. O'Flaherty what he thinks is why, whether he thinks there is enough research being undertaken or
I think
the issue is.
I mean, it's obviously very difficult for me to comment on a specific Maldives debate, but I would certainly want to say that I think the power of a data-based approach to climate science is essential for governments as policymakers. And certainly we have seen repeated reports from the UNFCCC scientific and research community, which really support the work that we are doing as negotiators around the COP process. And I think that we need to listen to those voices, and we need to make sure that we are taking the action which the science tells us we need to take, but we also need to be supporting the scientists and the researchers to ensure they have access to the data which they need to essentially calculate the fate of our children's future. And of course, there can be no greater use of data than the future of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flaherty. Dr. Mizna, let's wrap up this question very quickly. You raised your hand, right? Yeah.
I just wanted to add on, since we have journalists as well with us. I think a very important aspect we can tap in, especially for a place like Maldives, where we are so geographically dispersed, is citizen science, and that's an avenue where I think for data collection as well, we can build collaborations, provide appropriate training. So that's one of the avenues we definitely should explore.
Thank you, Dr. Mizna. The next question is from Fatma Quresha, freelance journalist.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please ask.
Okay, to anyone and everyone. How bad is the agriculture sector in terms of pesticide, fertilizer usage, and the impacts of impacts due to lack of monitoring? For example, as many of the panelists have discussed here, there's no data quantifying biodiversity in agricultural islands, especially places like Alif Alef Toddu and or Kashidu. Due to such gaps in research, the real impacts of pesticide use cannot be predicted. For example, we do not know how many non-target species have been eradicated in the islands due to unmonitored pesticide and fertilizer usage. And recently, government has handed over two uninhabited islands, Halif, Mulidu, and Lamgadu, to Agro National Corporation, AgroNet for farming and agriculture. Lamgadu is a very special place for green turtles and has a diverse ecology. It is one of the 14 islands decreed as turtle nesting hotspots in the Maldives since 2006 by the government. Today on World Biodiversity Day, a local movement, Save Maldives, which is a citizen-led campaign against environmental destruction, have started a campaign, #SaveGadu, raising voice against this and asking government to stop this. So my questions are, why is the government backing out from this pledge or allowing unsustainable agriculture in Lamgadu? Are there any incentives for organic farmers, and are there any local organic certifications, international cooperations or standards that we are part to that reflect responsible management of natural resources and fair trade principles initiated by the Maldivian government or private sector? Isn't this important to consider in Maldives, especially in the context of health risks associated with industrial farming methods, food security, safe and quality food, migrant worker exploitation, human trafficking? Okay.
Very, very big question, Gure. Would anyone here like to answer this question?
Maybe you can start.
Yes, Home.
Well, I'm really pleased to hear that some of the participants have been looking at the issue of Gadu. And yes, the Maldives campaign has joined others to lobby for the reversal of the decision to give Gadu, which is a site of significant environmental and ecological sensitivity and interest, and very biodiverse variety of areas on this island. So the issue of agriculture as it is practiced in the Maldives right now is actually pretty alarming. Now, I do know that the previous agriculture minister has mentioned in one of her press statements during COVID, in fact, that there is an effort to promote farming without chemicals. Now, the extent to which this is happening, we have no idea. But the reality is that much of the farming practices that is continuing, even including the trial centers, are using extremely chemical dependent farming practices, which they are going and selling to other farmers, in the island. So Toddu is the preeminent example. They would, instead of using their what they call medicine base, they by measuring them, they'd rather throw it in the well for good effect. These are practices that we know people have shared stories about. So the fact that our farmers are ill-informed, ill-educated, and badly abused, in a sense, because that's the truth about it. Because they are abused, they are ignorance, they're being misled, they've been told this is the only way to farm, this is the best way to get a yield. There are, of course, individuals who have gone off this spectrum and is trying to do their farming without any. I'm sure Sandy will be able to give us some insight about his own farming adventures in Puladu. But the reality is that this is a huge problem, and we don't know. Again, this is not studied. There is no, we talk about NCDs going completely off the scale in our population because of Gilapushi, because of this, because of that. But the food we eat, how safe is the food we eat? The food we eat, we are about 90% of our imports, the food we eat is coming from abroad, and that too we don't know the state of impact. So our farming is bad. The farmers from whom we are buying, we don't know the state of. So we are actually completely vulnerable to bad food products, badly farmed products. So this is actually an area I think nobody. I'm sure I'll hedge my bets here. I don't think anybody here is too familiar with this.
I think we've established that we're not very good at doing research or collecting data. Dr. Ibrahim.
The question also mentioned about the obligations. Yes, Convention on Biological Diversity, and also a lot of conventions on pesticides and organic wastes. We are signatory like Basel and Rotterdam Convention as well. So under all these conventions, we are obliged to manage waste as well as use of pesticides. And I don't know whether you are aware, but there was a Pesticide Act also, which the Parliament we were debating and we were discussing about, and now it is ratified and it's an act. And also the Agriculture Ministry is now trying to implement the act and enforce the act, and they have formed a pesticide management committee as well. Yeah, this issue is a pressing issue, and I know that it has to be done through various ways to tackle. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. I'm running out of time. I have still 5 more questions, so I will come back to you after this question. The next one is from Ifham Niaz Atolskip.
Hello.
Hi, Ifham. Yes.
Mi sualini Nuraja program abegoto. Nuraja program ki devi sarkara berga by Jamia a Blue Prosperity Coalition kya. Emihunna guligen hinga program kama ingifawani. Then sualaki දිවි සරකාර බේරුග ජමීයතකයක්කො හිංගා නූරාජ්‍ය ප්‍රෝග්‍රාම්ග දර්ශුන් උෆද්දා මෙරින් ස්පේෂල් ප්ලෑන් එයි හාසකො දිගුරාස්තෑන් හෙදේ ප්ලේනක වාති මි ප්ලේන් එකුලවාලුමා හිංගුමුග ගානූනි ජාගය අනේ දිවෙහිංග ආමු හග්ගු හිමේනේ ගොතකි කොබාතෝ දෙන් ආදි මී රයිතුන්ග ගුදරති තරිකය වසීදත්තක සීදා ගුළුම්හුරි ප්‍රෝග්‍රාමක වාති නූරාජ්‍ය ප්‍රෝග්‍රාම්ග ශාමිල්වා දෞලතක වුසාරතක බේරුග ජමීයතක වෙවේ එබ්බස්වමුග හිමේනේ ටර්ම්ස් ඇන්ඩ් කොන්ඩිෂන්ස් අකි ආමුකො ගෙජට් කුරේ ෆාවා චත්තෝ නූනම එයි කීවතෝ ಶುಕ್ರಿಯಾ
government minister
me MOU ಗೆ ದಾಶೋಂಗೆ ಮಸಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊರೆವೆನಿ Ministry of Fisheries ಗೆ agriculture and marine resources වීම අලොනක සුවාලක ජවාබ
සින්දේනොන් තෝමීගේ බෑවරිවා මිනිස්ට්‍රි තක්ක තෙරේක
කිකේත
environment ministry was say by in the em list ko
adi alolu adi mi hawal vi ham hafta ha dos adi mi hama it will take me a few more days to understand the detail. I have not even attended one meeting on it yet.
Ek kuring we sinnanunto nice of you harat
aluvane nohonnan ekko
and anybody else could answer this question? Mike.
I've been following it. I have also not attended meetings. I've been following email group broader kurin kuri suwala misuwala sporkon gulwala found cheke gunadam beenu anis precautionary principle ge waha kama komme mis kennam beenu alme kankan nimmayru ei spatial marine spatial planning hedikam gavies no nilamo gadu galgon men ane mi agriculture fish kam gavies mi alun men emmenge macchen onne zimmai ada dividaje gaanono diviraje gaana asasi timawta behegutum lief on mi iru eba pune දිවේ දෞලතා දිවේ රයිතුන්නා දිවි රාජ්‍යයේ එම්මෙන් දිවි රාජ්‍යයේ තිමාවශි රක්කාතරික කුරියන් ජීවිතක මේ දමහට්ටේ මසේ කුරමාන වාහකවර සාෆ් කොයි බබුනේ ඒ වාහක ප්‍රිකොෂනරි ප්‍රින්සිපල් ගස් නිබුණනි මිබුණා වාහකයේ මේ තිමාවට්ට ගෙල්දන් ලිබෙනුනේ මාළුගොන් මෙන්ගේ government nunia alonmenge vetta madamage jeevitaka vasil kuruma එය ගෙල්දුම ලිබේකම වනිවියම් එකම සියාසී මරහදාතෝගේ අධිහෙනිය මරහදාතෝගේ කොන්සිඩර් ඒ එගොතන් අමද කරු එහෙම මේ ඒ හග්ගුතෝගේ වාහක දක්කාර තිමාවිශිගේ හග්ගුත වාහක දක්කාර ගානූනේ ගවෑදේ නෝනියම් පොලිසිය නෝනියම් මේ රයිස් මිනිස්ටර් හගීගතුග බේනුමෙන් නෝම් ප්‍රිකෝෂනරි ප්‍රින්සිපල් එකන් හුට්ටුවන් අන්නාක ප්‍රිකෝෂනරි ප්‍රින්සිපල් දකියගේ සාතුග ඒගේ බාරු කොම්මේ මීහකබස් ලිබිගම් වාකම ලී ෆොන්නන් ජෙහෙ චෙන්නෝ ඒග වාහකකි ඉන්ට්‍රින්සික් වැලියු දමහට්ටන් කුරංජෙහෙ මසේකතුග වාහක දෙමෙට්ටන විතරග්ගිය ಟಕಾ ದಿಮೆಟ್ಟನೆ ವಿ ಗೊತ್ತೆ ಗಳವನಿಗೆ ಮುಸ್ತಮ ಅಳುಮಿ ತಿಮಾವೇಶ ಬೇಶಿ ಬಾಬಂ ಕುರಂಜೆ ಮಾಸೆಕತು ಗವಾ ಎಹೆ ಮೆರಿನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಹೆದಿಯಸ್ ಲಾಮ್ಗು ಗಾದುಗ ಮಿಕಂ ಕುರಿಯಸ್ ಪ್ರಿಕಾಷನರಿ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ ಕು ಅಳುವನ್ಮೆಂಗೆ ತಿಮಾವೇಶ ಹಲಾಕ್ ಕುರಾಕ ಫುರ್ಸತೆ ನುದಿಬೆ ಹಾಸಕೊಂ ಮಿಕಹಾಲ ತಂತ ಮಿಕಹಾಲ ಮುಹಿಮ್ಮು ಮೆರಿನ್ ಪ್ರೊಟೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ಏರಿಯಾಸ್ ನೋನಿಯಾ ಮೆರಿನ್ ಏರಿಯಾಸ್ ತಂ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೋಯ್ಟ್ ಕುರಾಕ ಫುರ್ಸತೆ ನುದಿಬೆ ಮಿಕಹಾಲ ಮುಹಿಮ್ಮು ಟರ್ಟಲ್ ನೆಸ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಝೋನ್ ತ ಮಿ ಹಲಾಕ್ ಕುರಾಕ ಫುರ್ಸತೆ ನುದಿಬೆ ಕುಳಿದು ಫುಶಿ ಕುಳಿ ಹಲಾಕ್ ಕುರಾಕಸ್ ಹಗೀಗತುಕು ಫುರ್ಸತೆ ನುದಿಬೆ ekon alonmenna me fennani eki sarkarutakon eki siyasattoge eki guggota amalta behettumge natija mi alonmen kurin dekki timawashi environment protection agency minimum quest kurenje sawbaki precautionary principle nagahattane gota mikam
thank you Maid.
Sorry to madigot
Just very quickly, there are some committees within the Nurajya program. There's a Marine Special Planning Committee, and it's a very open committee in the sense anybody, like anyone can be part of that committee. Anybody can invite another person to be part of that committee, and they discuss principles. At this stage, there is a planning stage where they are discussing the principles around which the marine special areas will be selected. And I think it would be very good if there are reporters interested in being part of that committee to volunteer to be part of that, because it's very open and anybody can actually be part of that committee. It's once you're in it, they send you an email on the various meetings. They have 2 meetings a month, I think, and it's very informative. I think it's very good for any journalist interested to request to be part of it.
Thank you, Huda. Our next question is coming from Nafahat Ibrahim, the edition.
I received a message from Nafahat stating that she is not able to attend the meeting. So if it's all right with everyone, I will present her question on her behalf, which is a bit strange for me especially, but anyway. So Nafahat Ibrahim from the edition says, although the environment is protected by the Constitution, certain decisions that are taken or sometimes being put into discussion by individual ministries, for example, planning, fisheries, or tourism, are at times seen to be damaging to the fragile ecosystems. So, given the apparently overlapping mandates of the Environment Ministry and the EPA, does the government have a solid plan to address the damages caused due to certain policies or projects and actually solve these problems moving forward?
This is a very big question.
We've also sort of addressed some of the concerns, but if anyone has anything to add on the topic, maybe good opportunity.
It is specifically about overlapping mandates of the different government bodies.
Yes.
And yeah, Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you. Yeah, there is overlap because environment is, as I mentioned you before, it's a cross-cutting issue. Health, transport, energy, international relations, fisheries, agriculture, tourism, all these are related and very much overlapping issues are there. So there are mandate issues which has been boiling down from the past historic institutionalism as well. I think one way to address this is this government has a pledge to implement strategic environmental impact assessment So that means strategically, whatever the plans, policies, or manifestos which the government brings out, or strategic action plans, all the important concerns related to the environment will be first assessed through a strategic environmental impact assessment, and decisions made based on that assessment. And the other thing is, I think the Parliament is now discussing a planning act, the Planning Act of Maldives. I think these two will have a framework which prevents development-related environmental damage, and how we can balance development and environmental sustainability. I think this act and the strategic environment impact assessment framework are what we are working now. Thank you.
Is there a timeline of expected timeline that you're working towards?
The strategic environment assessment is almost final, and I think our minister will have a review of it, and pretty soon we will be able to gazette that. The Planning Act, I think our distinguished MP can mention where the Planning Act discussion is now.
MP Hytham?
I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
The act?
The Planning Act.
Vinavashikan.
No, National Planning Act.
Yeah, that's a Vinavashikan. Actually, it's in a joint, there was a joint committee, and within the joint committee, there's another subcommittee. So the work is in progress now, and Environment Committee and another committee, I forgot the name, I'm sorry. They are joined together and they're working on that bill now. So hopefully, not sure that we'll be able to get it done within this period, this session. The next session, I think, will be done.
Mike, thank you. Mike, did you have something to contribute?
Yes. So there's definitely an issue when it comes to the legislative bills around, the acts around. So it started, I started to get distracted by this early in 2005, 6, 7, that time, when the bird had a different act and the fish had a different act, and when the protected island had a different act to govern them. And that has continued to be the situation. And if you look at the shark situation right now, there's a fisheries ban in place. The shark species is not protected by the Environmental Act. And if you have to change, if you want to change this act if you want to change the species from the Fisheries Act to the Environment Act now, there are certain other regulations and laws in place within the Fisheries Ministry that still governs the shark. And there are also laws that can actually govern the seabed, the sea floor, the reef, and also separate ones that would govern a protected area. So having that issue come to me from that time onward, I've always been talking about this issue. What has happened now is that just now MP was talking about the Land Use Planning Act, which is different from the Planning Act that is being drafted now, that is supported by the UNDP, and there's a process going on to that. Climate Emergency Act is out there. We are hearing of possible environmental act revision. We are also aware that there is work on trying to have a National Development Act somewhere down the line. I'm not sure. So these are many acts, many legislative, and they overlap each other. Currently, the Land Use Planning Act draft, which is in the Parliament, talks about establishing a National Planning Council, Planning Committee, a national one. And I don't know how this can again be put in the Planning Act when the Planning Act comes down. I don't know how that would have an impact. From my professional experience, I had worked previously with the National Disaster Management Authority. There is a responsibility, according to their act, on assessing loss and damage. Now the Climate Change Act comes in place, and they also talks about assessing loss and damage. I'm not sure who is going to be compensated and who is going to be, I mean, what would happen among the community. So there's definitely an issue with the legislative processes, and it's important that don't rush into making legislative the bills or acts without actually communicating and having a discussion among everyone involved. I mean, definitely there's no discussion involved.
Thank you, Maid. Hume, I'm going to ask you to keep it to 30 seconds if you can, because I have 3 more questions.
I will. Just very briefly, I just wanted to mention to the participants especially. Now, we have a situation where a lot is changing here in our legal framework, in the way we look at things. There are so many old laws that needs changing, that we have a new constitution. So there's been a lot of changes happening, but then it's not been a smooth ride, has it? So the problem is, you know, the governments that are coming with their political persuasions are not necessarily interested in ensuring that we have the right law, fixing the right problems within the time that we need to do that. So by the time we fix all these paperwork, we will not have time to act on anything, especially the climate. So I think this is why climate activism is so important, environmental activism is so important by all of us to actually, rise above all these limitations and demand change that actually brings results for people on the ground. And that is absolutely necessary, because we can be here watching people making act after act after act that doesn't translate into any action on the ground. So we don't have time. We don't have time for acting and to write acts. Thank you.
Thank you, Hume. The next question is from Hinna Khalid. She's a freelance journalist. Hinna, are you here?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
I will take it in the way. Furtama Varbar Shukriya, me Bagutu, Deviti, then Algunambura, Lium Teri Kamami, Arna Jones, Varbar Sabba, Hata Hedi. Research check the work for Mumihar Dairo, me information, Hodam Balali, Aslo availability of information Hama. By far, Hamanille Buna Haltanga de Baki area. Again, Mihar Huri, Kobahe, what are the available data on the percentage of environment damage caused? Get from tourism industry, EPA, Eba Gendava, Eba Masike Kuria, Gendava, Eba Bala, report the King Hadava, Ege much of West Commis Varege, me data stacking Hundam Vani, Mihar Ekulava. Kobahe data as the key way data stuck and Aslo Shia Nukurevedi. Then who may walk the Comagenda Hama Mafar Masalia, Kuldufushi, the Mafi Masalia, Mihuriha come a Vesebe Inge. Kon dimal kunto a data ta libeni. Again, Arun Misalaka sustainable tourism to circular economy, me climate change, Ikon, Miharmio technology, Yahuria Kamaka Visnafa, become a balairo data, Netiamo, Kinetoe, Misa Arun me, Misna Burubi, and Misna me, Maseketake, interest me, Dirasa very Lolokunga, Balag and Kuria Gendam, Benum, Vias, Mikan Kurani, Kinetoe, Kiha Vareto, Huri, information. Devenavaru Beflako Devia Varangal Varatera, Minister Shauna, Vadan, Netima, then Varatera, Nura Cheke, Kolungama, Rai Sophia, Gudikin Gendava, by Gotkahama Fendikin, then Algunes on and Adoko, Egiteria Vadeve, then Mihuria Kamaka, the egg is Swalaki. A Nuraj program guys have been the 75% rely on now ocean. How did I would air swal toy? How did you all came with that percentage? A percentage a befruna without way for a program hinda kama vanyamu. Ki vegan toy, I remember a benova information, Nudibeni, Abra yet may have been Ekang and a courier waff, Ekang company got me data's availability and Hundam Benovati, a bab or a ben, one heavy mammy, Netima, Miaswala, Jawabit de Viavaraga.
Thank you, Hina. I think it had several parts in it. The first part was tourism industry, the specific core. Where would you find the data? Maid had his hand raised. Can I ask, get answer from Maid first?
That was a hand raised from before, but I think in short, I think I think in short, the environment na midima wa masale ki hama kurim bis kuni hen data availability, accessibility, environment sama vara masake kura mi RTI noda mawlumat amunna dibene koi boom para muhim wana so accessibility komme bay komme curious e mawlumat hissa kuranche kaniya so e kandenge mi haru nuwa kam.
I would also like to give Home this India this opportunity, but we are now working with less than 5 minutes at the event as well.
ಗುಣವೇತೋ ಬಲಾನಂಗೆತೋ ಮಿಹಾರು ಅನೆ ಡೇಟಾಗೆ ಮಿ ಇಶ್ಯೂಗ ಅಲ್ಗೊಂಡೆ ಸ್ಕುರಿ ಬುರುಗ ದೆಂಗೆ ಚೆನ್ನು ದನ್ನವ ಏಕಮಕು ಮಿ ಡೇಟಾಗೆ ಮಸ್ಸಲೇಕಿ ಅಸ್ಲು ಮುಳಿಯಕುನ್ ಡೇಟಾ ನೆತುಮೆ ಬೆಸ್ನೋ ಮಿಸಾಲಕಂ ಮಿ ಬೇಣುಮಾ ಕಂತತ್ತವುಗ ಡೇಟಾ ಬೇಣುಂ ಕೊಗ್ಗೆಂ ಹಾದ ಕಂತತ್ತಕ್ಕೆ ಕುರವೆ ಇಂಗೆತೋ ಸರುಕಾರ ಬೆಸಲ್ವನ್ ಮೆನ್ನ ಫೆನಿಗೆಂದಿಯ ನೆಟ್ ಡೇಟಾ ಉಪದಿಗೆಂ ದಾತ ಮೆಸಿಗೆತೋ ಮಿಹಾರು ಮಿ ಸಿಯಾಸಿ ಬೇಣುಂ ತಕುಗ ಡೇಟಾ ಯಕಿ ವರ ಬೊಡಂ ege najaiz me benun puran nuwa gotan ufaddagen mes benun pura echeka wati argumenge terega data credibility yakhi bara dati me ege me certainty ya mihuri haichi argumenna liben nove by fahara ekamaku alonhama me hinna dekki wahakya me jawabege gotun comment ege gotun add kollam benuma pointing inima ei guli falu hikkambegen e puratama phase nimigen me rayitun hale palellavagen majlihan e masala waddagen majlis committee yan e gosgen wa dekebunu wahakaga kuri kamaki majlihuga tibbevi memberu majlihuga tibbevi rayitunge mandubun ಗುಳಿಫಳು ಹೆದಿಫೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಮಿ ಗುಳಿಫಳುಗೆ EIA ಗೆ ನೋವೆ ಮಿ ರೆಸಿಡೆನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಹೌಸಿಂಗ್ ನ ಜಾಗ ಒತ್ತುಮೆ ಏಕಮಕು ಮಜ್ಲಿಹುಗೆ ಮೆಂಬರುನ್ ಕುಲ್ಲಿಯಕಂ ಹಹಾಸ್ ಯೂನಿಟ್ ಹೌಸಿಂಗ್ ಯೂನಿಟ್ ಏಗೆ ತೆರೆನ್ ಇತುರು ಕೊಫ್ಫಿ ಜಸ್ಟಿಫೈ ಕುರಂ ಗುಳಿಫಳು ಮಿ ಹಿಕ್ಕುಮುಗೆ ಮಿ ಮಶ್ರೂ ಕುರಿಯ ಗೆಂದ ಕೊಂತಾ ಕುಣ್ಣುಕು ಡೇಟಾ ಎಕ್ಕಮೆನ್ನಂಗೆ ಕೋಚಕ ಬಿನಾ ಕೊಫ ಉಣ್ಣುಕು ಎಚ್ಚೆಕ್ಕಮೆನ್ನಂಗೆ ಹೆಮಿಮ ಮಿಕಹಾಲ ಗೊಗ್ಗೊತಂ ಅರ್ಗೊಮೆನ್ ನಂಬರ್ ತ ಬೇನುಂ ಕೊಂ ಹೆದುಮಕಿ ವರಬೊಡು ಮಸ್ಸಲೆ ಇಂಗೆತೋ ಹೆಮಿಮ ಎಬಯಗ್ಗೆ ಎಬಗುತೆಗ್ಗೆ ಒಯ್ ಸಿಯಾಸಿ ಬೇನುಂತಕೆ ಫುದ್ದಂ ಎಬ ಅನೆ ಮಿ ಫಾಡ್ಫಾಡುಗೆ ನಂಬರ್ ತಂ ಹದಾಗೆಂ ಎಬ ಬೇನುಂ ಕುರೆ ಮಿ ವರಬೊಡು ಮಿ ಬೇಯಿನ್ ಸಾಫೆ ರೈತನ ಕುರವೆ ಹೆಮಿಮ ಅಲೋನ a point pahak kollam benum.
All right, thank you. Sandy, it's a bonanga betam yagara furu.
E nurajya gota den rajya ga bara me ma koren me dive rajya adiyat diyani ye kiyafa bes maragina fasata benum kure adi climate change climate emergency bodoralo erum me huriha kamaki rajya financially maragina fasata ibe kantatta ekamaku hagigatuga bes around visnadali koba he rayitu miha sadamak kuram mikamun vi kon kametto around hamunu fene bara ginan fene me tantaga nambodu kommes aide aslu hagigatuga egen vi kon kametto then research rajyega research eba hada ingeto arab bawaru haba beno mihoko as research hadala fadani eki NGO na eki mihuna kulige mega beno mane aquatic hama huriha kame en umbrella ge tere patege mekan dambi misalaka aquatic safety or aquatic world ge me ebbes back research hedias me umbrella ge tere erun ekaku aneko bola jehon
I thank you, Sandy. I know everybody wants to have give some input into this discussion, but we are really running out of time. And so I will just go to the last question from Raif Amil Jalil. He's a freelance journalist. Raif?
One moment, I am giving him access. Yes, Raif, you can speak now.
Raif, we cannot hear you.
Maybe there's a problem with his mic, possibly.
Okay. Would you, Rai, question is quite big.
I have a suggestion. What if I slide shared that question so that everybody can also see it, because it is a rather big one.
I could just ask his question from the question part. Should I just go ahead?
Yeah, you can go ahead. It is quite long though.
I will just go to the question that he has. Why hasn't the Parliament Committee on Environment and Climate Change discussed legal solutions to prevent these corporations and projects from greenwashing and exploiting our resources with fancy buzzwords? I think it related to some of the presentations from earlier today about greenwashing. That's the first question. And second question is there any movement to increase regular checks and balances to ensure accountability in terms of carbon footprint? Or is there any plan at policy level to increase regulations with stricter enforcement at the very least, or affected communities if they so wish to raise criminal charges on such perpetrators? MP Haitham, I think it's directly
share the question for you as well, so that you will be able to see. I'm trying to at least.
I am not seeing MP Haitham. Is the MP here?
He's on mute. I have asked him to unmute the MP Haitham. Can you hear us?
I'm sorry. Could you please rephrase it?
The question, why hasn't the Parliament Committee on Environment and Climate Change discussed legal solutions to prevent greenwashing? Are you doing anything actively towards that? Is there any movement to increase regular checks and balances to ensure accountability?
Yeah. I think in most of the recent bills, those clauses are there. And at the moment, I cannot say in specifically which clause are there in that. But that is something we are addressing. And but I'm not sure whether we are addressing it to the extent that the public is demanding it. So let's say the first thing I can do with the next committee meeting is I can raise that issue with our committee and see what the feedback is. And on this chance, I would like to say something regarding the public feedback also. Actually, we do open it for public forums and we do gazette it. But the thing is, we don't get enough feedback from the public. We cannot go on asking each and every person for feedback, but we do gazette it, we do have public forums. And I'm afraid Transparency Maldives is one which always comment us, and MRC, they do comment us. Then the government, where Environment Ministry, EPA, they do. But we get not that much, but very few feedback from the public. But with this, I think with what you are doing now, the public will be much more aware of these things. And I expect more feedback from the public, especially with the help of the journalists.
Thank you, MP Haitham. Shazia?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to add to the public comment part. Thank you. And I do acknowledge it's much easier to work with the current parliament than the previous one and have access and closer relationship. But we also, even Transparency Maldives being the having staff who is paid, it's not the real context of the civil society in the Maldives. So the limited time we are given, most of the CSOs in public are not being able to provide enough time, and without proper information and data, it's very, very difficult. So I want to highlight that. And also the format in which the public gets the bills to comment is also very difficult. We get a printed version, which is gets like PDF and scan and PDF. So it's very difficult to access. And so in other countries, there are very easier way to do it. Some European countries, they just break down and make changes that they are bringing and put it open for public through digital formats. Maldives is one country which we all are very much connected through this technology wise. So maybe those are something that Parliament could adopt and make sure that the civil society and the local people, everyone is being able to comment. We will continue to give time and comment, but Transparency Maldives or MRC is not going to be able to represent the whole country and the public. So that's something to consider. Thank you.
Just to wrap up this question, I would perhaps ask Mr. O'Flaherty how perhaps in the international arena, greenwashing could be tackled through legislation, or if it contribute something.
I mean, obviously, this is, as you said, a Maldives debate. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to engage specifically on how it's working in the Maldives. But I would say that we, as COP26 presidency, certainly do see the importance of legislation to tackle climate change. In the UK, we were one of the first countries in the world to mandate the government to reach net zero by 2050. There's a legal obligation on us to do actions every year to reduce our emissions, and there is an independent commission which holds the government to account. And I think the legislation and the structures built around it have been key in making sure that we are keeping our promises. And so we are very pleased to see other G7, G20 international partners do the same. We were very pleased at the very strong message from G7 countries just a few days ago, including phasing out international co-financing. So not just action within those countries, but actions worldwide are being affected by this debate now. I hope very much that your experience in the Maldives can continue to develop, and certainly that you can continue to ramp up your climate action. I'm really excited about the Maldives. I think the fact that you have a net zero by 2030 target means that you are world leaders in this area. And as presidency, we're really keen both to be supporting you and also to be ensuring that your voice is heard internationally as well. I'm afraid I have to go to another appointment now, but it's been a really interesting debate, and I'm really pleased to see such passion in the debate in the Maldives. So I hope to have the opportunity to meet many of you again. But bye for now.
Thank you for being here. I hope that you'll also maybe help us get our own journalists at COP. We've never had media representation at COP before, and I think it's very important to have small island states represented in that regard as well. So I hope we can maybe work together with MJA or media organizations as well to do something on that regard. But thank you so much for your time. We're so pleased to have had you here. Thank you again.
Thank you again.
So do we have time for one more question, or do we wrap this up now, right?
I think, of course, everybody here is only, required to be here for the stated amount of time. But if you're, happy to give us a couple of more minutes, then I think we should try and finish the last question, and then we will just wrap up and say goodbye to everyone. But yes, of course, no one's obliged to be here at this point.
So I'll just go ahead and ask the last question. Asit is here, right?
Yes, she's here. And Asit, you can speak now.
Okay, thank you. Member Haitam Hunneviam Haitam Swal Colabinan. Mita mi fahaga kurevi coffee then iki go to iki be from west then hini go to kurin sare sarman arbive kame mi timaveshiga daida and majling ganun ta fast kura eruga mi timaveshiga himayat ga maseke kura mi jamiyat hoge sadiamil lavis parat hoge mi mashwara ekashige bagotaka nuhoda khang mi climate emergency ganuna gule gotumes mi miedo arunna e kambodon adu ifawani hema mi kine veganto mi gota kanta dani den haitam komisar ka bahaka dakkawa fi mi amunge mashwara ya hulwa lima ekashigema baraka hiyalu libe kama ding mikamugaves arwen menna mi advocate unge faratun adu iveni ekashigema gotaka mi fursatunu deve tiye mi ekashigema gotaka mi hiyalu wata mashwara amunge faratun mes libe nihima mikama ane mi hallen hoddawan maseke kurabanto
දෙහින් යාම දෙහින් ජවාබ් දෙන මිහාර ඒක නේ දෙම්මක සම්ෆා කුරි ගොතන් අසල්මන් ඕපන් කොද්ලන් හම කොම්මෙ බිදෙන් යා කමුග වෙස් පබ්ලික් ෆීඩ්බැක් නේ යෙම ෆොත්තම සල්මන් පුරා කන්තන් හම කොමිටි දැන් එනක කොමිටි තා කී හම හොරියා කොමිටි තා කී වෙස් ලයිෆ් පුරාන කොමිටිස් තන් අන්ලෙස්ට් ඒ වර්කින් කොමිටි න කමුග වෙච්ච ඒ වර්කින් කොමිටි කිම්සල් ක බිදෙක් ගම එක ක්ලෝස් එක වාක දක්කාදන් කල්මිති බදානේ එත ඉරවන්ත වෙසමා ebe dubada dating close එක මොලි session එක ගොත 7.5 hours ke eme sessions stuff yawa hen huria sessions එක යන live pura aching enaka egiturun en mi public comment ngalme huwada komme pahar posten korim san pa kori gotu mi huwada fa gazette on mi purani majlis ke website majlis ke mi twitter gaya majlis ke facebook page gaya majlis ke instagram page gaya පුරියතන ගවර්න්මන් ඇති ඒව ඕපන් කොල්ලා ඒ එකමක දෙන්නේ කොළඳ ෆාහ කරවුන් මිකොළුගෙන මේ කොමෙන්ට් මේ කොමෙන්ට් පැනල් තෙරෙන් chat window තෙරෙන් අන්න ෆාහ කරවුන් මේ අල්මෙන කොමෙන්ට් ෆොනුයි කමක වේ සල්මන්ගේ ෆරාතුන් acknowledgement ඒව හුට්ටේ නුදිපා ඒ ෆාහ කරවුන් කම දෙන්නේ කොළඳ ඒ acknowledgement නන් නුදිපේ කමක වෙච්ච එක කොමෙන්ට් ෆොනුවා ෆරාතක වෙස් ඉංගේ නුදබ්බානේ අල්මෙන් ඇති දිබුන් කමෙන් නුදිබුන් කමෙන් අල්මෙන් ඇඩ්‍රස් කුරි කමෙන් e gina parakal working session එක terega live purikamugo vies ekal comment ang address kura adu nee vene e evagu tinnani mic ene mute fa ara bar wahateke inga munda ative e mikamuga ene mi out of meet faha kurevijje mihar warapodu complain ek gotu gehen warapodu issue gotu me register fa e out denna veni hama emme furatama onna session ga ene nolutum bawte sawanang echen attend kurevidane adi ves miyatturam bodan hama huluwada public feedback naga gotan adi public feedback neki malmen acknowledge koffa eti almen libunka mag notification ti kola dibena gotan edefun ehen hetichi kam janade hiwani miharuti ene complaint kurava dina kantattakan almen address kure vidana hen en ituru evs nengen demand men kam gojja mi devva almen hama irad kurve vi has product ni te tendo kofe kantata nakal kottena
thank you Amhaitam. The question was climate emergency ready to summarize if anybody else wants to add to that. No.
If I may say, climate emergency bill ga huri wara gina kantattage hi journalist nge gotuga wara closely follow kore vidane kantattage hasako mi ready thonunto bodan ingene wara ambition shas karne plan taking e bahuri ha arne sarukaru kiha waraka me e plan ta kai gotan initially me ekta me chitan arna gotuko ekama ko wara rangalu kantattage huri misalaka fund ta kai me manage kurman in baki institution en hada gotan e ben one thing arne rajya kal gomakon me hasako me corruption na governance ka ehme rangala function nokura gomakon wara muhimmu kame ehem ekal kantatake journalist wara boda fa koram den data ge kantatake mi ganon ge dashon e bahuri arne data take collect kuran jehe kan kashavar koddi penoni majbur ko fem e chita kureto beno miharu oti civil society journalist unge ammatiga kannege emme boda koreven because so if they are not doing it we will have to and then majilum obviously ane kan implement nokura kamanya koran jene kamko is a right unge gotuga I think our men kannege miharu kan kuram mitibi
thank you for the input Shazia. Mike, did you have something to add?
me climate emergency ready to all me climate emergency ga mitibi inget all men ready wa ka asama bar waguten nem mihar me an evidence suggests some miwaha kawara saaf kon IPCC ge report to kon heri fenna alun menna karisi hiras e korea buren bodu ngato disaster risk alun menna wara bodu bi musum badalge anne alun mege rajya ge rattako kura vissarya eya ekiga e alun mege rattawge gudruti mi rakkatirika nune difawa nizamta med huri alun mege amilla atu nattali ege terega uli chasbin faatan alun menna nattali vi alun mege farutan alun men ek guggutun hadakkon alun men etantanuga ni alon men lafuri toshitan efratun toshilafiya man efratun alon men ge ratta girage itoro salamen kurave wara gellum ge dani alon men amilya kuravunu kandittege sobu alon men ge mi climate emergency idi itoro gos mi wan nema tayyaruwa alon men kanne ma bodu wagut alon men kuram mi je kamaki miharavun alon men ge mi mitik mi adaptation maseke alon men vilumberi wan kuranje maseke resilience alon men kuranje maseke itoro kuram mi chen miyeda alon men naka ಹಗೀಗತ್ತುಗೊಂಡೆ ವಗುತೆ ಮಾಗಿನ ಕಂಕಮಕ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಕುರಂತಿ ಬೇಕ ಮಾಗಿನ ಲೆಜಿಸ್ಲೇಟಿವ್ ಮಸೆಕೆತ್ತ ಕಂ ಉಳೇಕ ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಿಹಾರು ಬೇಣುಮಣಿ ವಗುತಂ ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಎಳೆಂಜೆ ಫಿಯುಳ್ತಂ ಎಳು ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಬೇಣುಮಣಿ ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಗೆ ರತ್ತ ಮಿ ರಕ್ಕಾತಿರಿ ಕುರೆವೇನೆ ನಿಜಾಮ್ತ ಮಿಹಾರು ಗಾಯಂ ಕುರೆವೆ ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಗೆ ಏವ್ವುರಂ ಬೊಡು ಪ್ರಯಾರಿಟಿ ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಗೆ ನೆ ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಗೆ ಫಾರುತ್ತ ಆಲಾ ಕುರ ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಿಹಾರು ಮಾದಮಾವಿಸ್ ಮೂದಗೆರೆಗೆಂ ಎಮ್ಮೆನ್ ನಿಕುಮೆಗೆ ಕುರಂಜೆ ಕಮೆ ಕುರುಂ ಅಳೋನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮುಹಿಮ್ಮಿ මෙවාක දක්කාර අලොන්ඩගෙන් මේ උදගු එක්කම කියෙන්දෙන් මේ ෆව් පොයින්ට් එක තවරන මේ උදගු පොයින්ට් එක අලොන් මෙන් දිරියුල එගොයි අලොන් මෙන් එබජෙහි බදල් කුරන් අලොන් මෙන් සතේ කඩ්ඩි හනෝ රෂුග උලගෙන්තෝ අලොන් මෙගේ රත්තෝගේ ඇඩැප්ටබල් කොන් අලොන් මෙන් උලෙවෙන් මිස්වාදකි උදගු සවාද අලොන් මෙන් එබජෙහි වාහක දක්කන් අලොන් මෙන්ගේ මිස් ස්පාෂල් ප්ලෑනින් ප්‍රොසෙසස් ගේ තෙරෙන් ආබාදි මිකාල කමක විස්නා එෆස් කුරන් විස්නන් අලොන් වෙජ මිවාක දක්කා කොම්මෙ ෆහරකෝ අලුවන්ඩ බෙස් ආදෙ වර චකුවා අලුවන්ඩා මෙදුස් මිහුන් දෙකේගෙත් බදල් එකම අලුවන් මෙන්ගේ සතේ කඩ්ඩිහ නුව රෂේ අලුවන් මෙන්නකෂේ රිසිලියන්ට් අයිලන්ඩ්ස් ගොතුගේ මිහුන් දිරුවලේ ගොතක අලුවන් මෙන්න මි ක්ලයිමේට් ඇඩැප්ටේෂන් මසේ කුරවිදානෙතෝ කොබාතු අලුවන් මෙන්ගේ ආබාදි මියවුරම් බොඩ රක්කාතිරි කුරවේන ගොතකි ෆන්සස් හබුතෝ හදානි කිහිනත්තෝ අලුවන් මෙන් මිරත්තෝග මේ සේෆ් අයිලන්ඩ් concept implement කුරානි කිහිනත්තෝ එරරෂුග මේ රක්කාතිරි බෝෆෙන් අලුවන් මෙන් බහට්ටානි කිහිනත්තෝ අලුවන් මෙන්න කාබෝතකති කෂවරුකන් යගින් කුරානි අලුවන් මෙ කිහිනත්තෝ එහෙර කංකන් මේ ආබාදිතව ගලුවන් මෙ කුරානි අලුවන් මෙගේ වගුතෙ නෙතේ ඒ අසෙන් මෙ මුහිම්මු පොයින්ට් එකි මේ රෙඩි වාකන් නෝ උගෙත මිහාරු මේ වගුතකි ඉංගත
Thank you, Maya. We are not ready, obviously. Hume, legislatively, how are we not ready, or what are the things we need to do to do?
I don't even me gaanu abades I don't even munda wahake minge to bay farataku miuleni gaanu nu netigene nune miuleni kankannu kogge emema mi hujjatek gotuga deke vene duwas ma duru ma kurim mes fight ve gossagoti ingeto algon menge intent neti algon menge political will neti algon men kankamang mi ijaba dinuma jehilum bani emema aslu as mi udaragen as algon menge bomatin diyame nun algon men teligannani ki kamek kuraka nehar algon menge mi maliya beli nama ves algon men naga decision takuge mi hiti mi natija algon men pennani misalege gotun naga male vasha faru reni japan sarukaruge hile ehin igeto ekamuku media sarukaruga etanun e vasha farun detam puwalwalafa malege futtaru faratun nerek kadafa doni faru waddan ulegen boduta capsize vima ekan kuri farang miharu heri malege meyaran algon men nagafa ingeto mi mikahal kankam algon men visnenje ekan handane tigenwan ehema mi hama es siyasi point ingeto den anekkamaki siya mi kudu fushi kuliyaki algon menge hama wara mi ane gatum balamun daktane kudu fushi kuli ke baki ebba himayat kuran ei etanuge flood mitigation naka taka baki ebba himayat kuran megen save Maldives campaign ukuri masakkatu nere foe den environment minister kives ekuga algon men maseke kuri ere foe report ek eburi recommendations take deepa ekan kodde vashe kiyagen algon men hale fale lavata mihar miwani deya haru ingeto ekamaku ekammes mi ehakaddu ku badalwe minister kurabban mi jehilumbe ingeto mihar de miharge minister mita ninne waradere mi wahaka mi raise kurava gutu ekamaku ekan eba kuranje ingeto erun komme miharu aharu dekolu ane musum badalwair kuludu fushi eba mi pemboduwegen eta geyakan eba mi gellundibe eta mihunnaka eba gellundibe ane mi maida englavane mige harattaka achievements rangala vejja ndma emema mi hama atun hifen huri kantatta miya deterega amali piyawalu nelige miuleni kudi kanta koggen detto bodeti kanta takabani emema algomenge will remember bes netima algomenge emme bodo emmaseleki algomenge ganun komme netige nebesnu kankan koggen hama miwlen ingeto shukriya.
Thank you, Homer, for the contribution. Huda, it's a vidarum.
Alin vara kurukong eche danwamege mi adaptation na tayyar wairu press ke faratun mi ekantata plan kura befronna swal kura wairu alne veni vara critical swaling hen kuravan komme infrastructure e plan kurairu kiha varakattu emion adaptation noni resilience a plan na visna hoti misalaka misalaka gulifal hadare ha vara spend kurairu kiha storming asia noni category 4 storming asia noni mihar alimina alami veni orange level alert da sane kadi storms anna iru alimenge eki infrastructure hadare noni iturang e kantata barukada kurairu ekahala information eki fasya game no inge to e integrate kuraka waake kinege varabodu cost me naganje ni tinharu hataru haru dunun annane kamaka miharu e spend kurani heye muniya miharu e nagani heye eki fasya decision ne naga ekamuku e conversation ma kurimis washam veche eka miharu e vara kurang muhim suwale hen alna hiwate wak danwa.
Thank you for that. May Dr. Ibrahim.
Ready to non to that the government asumi event driven coping strategy me onani udairima ragashugami udali fan nikume ekuraka mekurani noniyamu hagigatuga mihare level ga hori gina ragashuga hama midetere femboduwegen wes wara haluga ulefi addu formula tantanuga hama e mi hama regular events take mihar formula ge sama mi 10 kuriga 10 years in dimawa munga event mihar every 1 or 2 years dimave de mihar aharmena data tak me benge Indian Ocean ga kom mehara ku de tufan e bofede mi inter monsoon ga irwaya hulanga de tirega mi enna monsoon ga anika hulanga irwaya de tirega mi enna inter monsoon ga mi de December ga ekati anika mi har mi haddo mi ai mi cyclone ufedige mi de himima mi wara bodeti ane challenges take ba kurimati wede miyan alun men fasa wara muhimmo den duniya bodeti gaum tak pledge ko fa buhuri billions of dollars hama mi 100 billion emi adaptation commit we february kam barfia wes emi spend no kore mi eka commit we fa no de mi de harak wes mi Europe ge by gaum takum wes I think this we should raise in the COP as well. mi loss and damage mi kantataka mi aharmege sarukaruge mi huri warakun adi hama mi huri ha islands tamai munihen mi resilient ko mi anna huri ha kamakun mi ratta salamat ko mule wara it's a very huge burden for us hama hasako local communities taka semi honge getaka sha mi honge ipa gengule saman taka mi anna komme harako effar mi libe gellunta mi hunne sama kopen kureve mi insurance scheme tanganne beje financial incentives ta ki level ganne beje murakamaka wara bawr finance me then we are dependent on international hama mi commitment taka hama international agreements ta commitment taka wara boda tie with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. I think we should wrap up, so I'll just give an opportunity to Shazia.
Yeah, thank you. While I agree, hamagina wahakatang aso ko rajya kalgauma ka mi libenje he fasa bore chigen nge baje we need to that support ekam rajya anna fasa age kanta kine to dane mi balange baje misala ka baikal projects ta ko mi session ge terega mi I'm sure afra hunna ne kyaldi ko by projects samsa ka waste college se ladli buni making ane emme rashigge waste manage kura warge anne output enno nereve kamanya evis ane while we get the money nangal korenje tangole then anetangol ki pahakola mane public input indigenous knowledge genomge mohim ka misala ka me horafushi airport me visara ko me gwarne fembodu era rashutere ane podwegen dieru rashuge mi hun hama fahaga kuri ane rashuge mi hunge wahakata mi gemberangala nugena wono kan mi he manikama buni iruga mi angala anu da wono kan වගුතු නගෑගෙන් පුරතම හම පශමෝන් අන්නේ සෙන්ඩි ෆාහක් කොරි ගොතන් EIH වගුතු නගෑගෙන් හෙදුන්ද වර උපාවෙච්ච මේ ස්ට්‍රැටජික් ඇසස්මන්ට් එකයි හෙදේනකම ෆාහක කුරිම හෙනවස් එම්මෙ මහකුන්නේ එම්මೆ ෆන්ස ස්තුහකුන්නේ නොහෙදේನೆ මේ රාජ්‍යයේ මේ මුසුම ගන්න බදවතකායි මුසුමක රාෂම්යන බදවතකායි කබලාගෙන අනික එම්මෙගේ ෆෙනේ බ පබ්ලික් පාර්ටිසිපේෂන් එක කියා ෆම වාහක දක්කා ෆොන්න මිහුන බලාලා ෆියා ඒක මිහුන්නනි ඒවරික සරුකාර කනෝනි වක්ති බඩ ගෑකොන් වලේ බයික වෙදානේ රංගලු රිප්‍රෙසෙන්ටේෂන් එන් උෆෙනේ එම් එබෑවිස බගෙන්නන් එබච්චේ හේ ෆහරික් ගහම මේ මනි එකනි නූන් කම වෙදාන සොලියුෂන් නකි එම් මේ එම්මෙගේ නොලෙජ් එකුලවාල විද්‍යාස් ෆහරික better solution en asana while we wait for that money we need to earn act my bona hin tankole me preventive kotaka.
Thank you, Shazia. I think this is all the questions we have for now. MP Haitham is also running late.
Yeah, very late. Sorry, Tasi, you wanted to end your statement?
So no, I just wanted to thank everybody for this very fruitful discussion we've had tonight. I hope the journalists have gained something from this panel as they were hoping. And I think we are very late, so let's wrap up, right?
Hama, first and foremost, I have so many people to thank, but like if I'm keeping it short and sweet, thank you, everyone, for being a part of this little, not so little virtual training. Thank you especially to our lecturers and our panelists for all of their time. But of course, Migema Bada Shukura Ada Korenjain to the journalists. This was all about you. This was all meant for you, to educate you, to make sure that you walk away with knowledge, sources, and ideas. So I hope that we've achieved that. I'm so glad. So all of us have and have interest you stayed here for so long. So I think all of this is very promising, and I hope that, you know, out of this comes a lot of work and a lot of reports and photos and videos, and we really look forward to seeing what you do after the within the 30-day period. And then if you need any sort of help when you're writing these articles, of course, there's a lot of journalists here who are just as experienced, if not more. Some are definitely more than me, but I'm still here to help you. This is what this is all about. And yeah, so like I said, there was through discussions one-on-one, or 3 to 4 people like that's also going to be something that we can try and help you organize. Also, I want to just make sure I thank all of the people who contributed to this. So thank you very much to my team. Thank you, Tanzi. Thank you, Bebe. Thank you, Avi, most of all. Thank you to the Journalist Association for giving me this opportunity to do this under their Iruva initiative, which is of course funded by American Center. Thank you to Uridu for helping make sure that our connection stayed stable, and I certainly couldn't have done it without their help. I also want to remind you guys, Modbula and Seva Waves have offered you discounted diving, as well as free guided snorkeling and free surfing. So please take them up on that offer. Adi obviously COVID situation activities, but it was really nice of them and really wonderful, I think, to help you sort of bring all of this to full circle and do something beautiful with the environment. So I hope you check them on that. Also, thank you to Suneva Resorts, who actually contributed a lot to the making of our website and making sure that we got all the materials to you and that this ran smoothly. So thank you so much. To our training partners as well. We have, all of your lecturers, all of your panelists, so I'm not going to take you through that again, but thank you very much for coming here and doing all of this with us. I hope that you do, follow through with the pledges that you guys made to us to create content in the next 30 days. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what you come up with. Good luck to everyone, and thank you again. 2 days is a lot of time to ask of anyone I know, especially journalists who are very busy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good luck.
you and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.